The cold from the granite courthouse steps seeped through my thin dress, a physical echo of the ice in my veins. I clutched the manila envelope containing my divorce papers, the final, flimsy testament to a 5-year marriage. The words, irreconcilable differences, blurred before my eyes. Then warmth. Amarae's soul enveloped me in a hug, her signature jasmine and orange blossom perfume a familiar comfort that now felt suffocating. "Sure, Zahira. You'll get through this." "I promise," she murmured, her voice a silken balm as she stroked my hair. I leaned into the embrace, a fragile dam of composure about to break. As I did, her leather purse, wedged between us, vibrated sharply. The screen lit up, a beacon of betrayal in the afternoon sun. A text preview glowed, unmistakable. Asterisk, beachfront villa tonight? Finally. Can't wait to see you. R. Asterisk, my breath hitched, saliva turning to dust in my mouth. Ronan. The world, the courthouse, Amarae's sympathetic coups, all of it fractured, sharpening into a single, painful point of truth. The person holding me, soothing me, was the architect of my ruin. The silence in my house was a living entity, thick and heavy. I poured a glass of water with trembling hands. The image of that text burned onto my retinas. It couldn't be a coincidence. I dragged my laptop onto the kitchen counter, the polished concrete cold against my elbows. I scrolled through months of sterile, legal emails from Ronan's lawyer, my vision sharpening with a new, terrible purpose. There. A forgotten receipt from 3 months ago, accidentally forwarded, for a boutique hotel called the Azure Cove. The address matched the one I'd glimpsed on Amarae's phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. When my phone rang, Amarae's name flashing, I answered with a calm I didn't feel. "Come over," I said, my voice a hollow imitation of grief. She arrived, a vision of concerned beauty, draping her expensive handbag on my coat rack. I made tea, my movements robotic, my smile a cracked mask. While she lamented Ronan's cruelty, I discreetly raised my phone and took a photograph of her bag's distinctive, embossed logo. It was an exact match to the one on the credit card receipt. The proof was no longer a ghost. It was taking solid, damning form. My phone buzzed, shattering the tense quiet. Ronan's name appeared. "Zahira," he began, his tone a masterclass in feigned weariness. "I'm outside the house. I thought we agreed I was moving my final things out today." He was painting me as unreasonable, forgetful in my grief. I gave a noncommittal reply and hung up, my eyes locked on Amarae's phone, left carelessly beside her teacup. It was unlocked. A silent dare. My pulse throbbed in my ears as I picked it up. The message thread with R was a devastating narrative of my betrayal. There were jokes about my naivety, a photo of them sharing a kiss in a restaurant I loved, and pet names that felt like violations. His lioness, he called her. My stomach churned. Amarae swept back into the room, plucking the phone from my numb fingers with a tinkling laugh. "Addicted to social media, even now?" she teased, leaning down to kiss my forehead. Her lips felt like a brand. I sat perfectly still, the taste of my own silent fury metallic on my tongue. In the deep, lonely quiet of that night, a profound shift occurred. The heartbroken Zahira began to recede, and a new, steely version took her place. I would not give them the satisfaction of my tears. I would be the perfect, cooperative ex-wife, too devastated to put up a fight. Amarae, believing her performance had been flawless, doubled down on her support, her closeness, now a perfect cover for my investigation. I became a ghost in my own life, silently copying timestamps, saving every digital receipt, and mapping their lies on a hidden digital board. I found a private investigator, a formidable woman named Alara, and hired her under the alias Artemis. My grief was no longer a burden. It was fuel. Days later, Alara's first report arrived. Attached was a crisp, high-resolution photograph of Ronan and Amarae, hand in hand, laughing as they exited a charming coastal B&B called the Seabreeze. The image didn't shatter me. It solidified my resolve. The hunt was officially on. Amarae insisted on a comfort dinner at a painfully trendy bistro, a place she knew I found too loud. She was radiant, her confidence a stark contrast to my carefully constructed fragility. She ordered for us both, her tone dripping with pity. Midway through an overpriced salad, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You should make this easier on yourself, Z. Sign the papers quickly. Don't drag it out. The lawyers will bleed you dry." Her words, disguised as concern, were laced with a greedy urgency. She wanted the settlement finalized, the assets divided, before I could possibly suspect their alliance. I simply smiled, a brittle, lifeless gesture. When the bill came, I didn't reach for my card. Instead, I counted out a stack of crisp $100 bills from my wallet, placing them neatly on the silver tray. I watched her closely. A flicker of surprise, then unease, crossed her perfectly composed face. She was seeing a glimpse of a Zahira she didn't know, and it unnerved her. Alara was a bloodhound. Her next email contained a complex financial trail. She had uncovered a series of bank transfers Ronan had initiated just days before the legal separation was filed. The money was routed through an anonymous art escrow account, a clever way to obscure its destination. The account name, Fleur de Sol Holdings, used a stylized phrasing unique to Amarae's cultural background. It was a tiny, arrogant flourish, a signature. I spent the night in my study, the glow of the monitor painting my face in blue light. I became a detective, connecting shell companies and dummy corporations on a large physical whiteboard. The web was intricate, but at its center were two names, Ronan Vale and Amarae Sol. As dawn bled through the windows, a direct message popped up on a private social media account from an anonymous sender. Asterisk, they're not careful with their faces in private. Be at the Salty Mermaid Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Asterisk. The Salty Mermaid was a quaint, weather-beaten cafe with a clear view of the ocean. I chose a secluded table, large sunglasses hiding my eyes, my phone's camera poised. Right on time, they appeared, looking for all the world like a perfect, happy couple. They shared a brief, tender kiss, then their conversation turned tense. I saw Amarae's perfectly sculpted brows furrow, her gestures sharp. Then, in a move so swift I almost missed it, she slid a small, silver USB drive into the front pocket of Ronan's leather satchel. It wasn't a lover's note. It was a transaction. My phone recorded the entire exchange, the video evidence cold and undeniable. Back home, I plugged the footage into my computer, my hands steady. Zooming in, I paused the video at the exact moment the USB was visible. The file name was clear. Vale Ledger _final. XLSX. A ledger. This was about money. The ledger was a devastating map of deceit. It wasn't just a list of numbers. It was the story of my marriage's unraveling, told in columns of cold, hard cash. I saw invoices for consulting fees paid to companies that didn't exist. Retainer payments were routed months before I noticed our shared savings account steadily draining. And there, on line item 147, was a direct payment labeled a sole project management fee. Amarae wasn't just stealing my husband. She was actively funding his new life, building his financial cushion with money that should have been ours. The betrayal was a two-headed monster, emotional and financial. As I sat there, the evidence glowing on the screen, a frantic knocking echoed through my house. I opened the door to find Amarae, her face streaked with what I now knew were crocodile tears. "Zahira," she choked out, "we need to talk. It's all gone so wrong." She swept past me, collapsing onto my sofa in a dramatic heap. The performance began. She was a victim, she claimed. Ronan had pursued her relentlessly, preyed on her vulnerabilities, coerced her into this impossible situation. She sobbed about her moral confusion, her voice cracking with practiced agony. She begged for my forgiveness, offering to return some of the funds she'd inadvertently been given. It was a brilliant, manipulative script designed to appeal to my empathy and my desire to believe the best of my best friend. I let the monologue wash over me, my face a placid lake masking the tempest beneath. Hidden in the pocket of my cardigan, my phone recorded every lying syllable. When she finished, I placed a hand on hers and said, "I forgive you, Amarae. We'll get through this." The relief on her face was nauseating. She left, believing she had dodged a catastrophe. I had her confession on tape. I needed to escalate. I created a secure, anonymous email account and attached the audio file of Amarae's confession. I sent it to Kaylin Morrow, the stern, principled investor whose capital was the bedrock of Ronan's company, Vale Holdings. The reply was swift and furious, landing in the anonymous inbox within hours. Asterisk, if this recording is authentic, it indicates a profound breach of ethics and fiduciary duty. Legal action will commence at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Asterisk, the shockwaves were immediate. I heard from a former colleague that the board had called an emergency meeting. Whispers of financial impropriety and personal scandal began to ripple through our social circle. I was no longer a bystander. I was the quiet architect of a storm. My personal phone buzzed. It was Ronan. His message was desperate. Asterisk, Zahira. We need to meet. Just us. In person. Please. Asterisk, he still thought he could charm his way out of this. I agreed to meet him in a neutral location, a sterile, glass-walled conference room in a corporate business center. He arrived looking haggard, his usual polished charm sanded away by stress. Zahira, this is all a huge misunderstanding, he began, spreading his hands in a gesture of innocence. Amarae, she twisted things. You know how dramatic she can be. I let him talk, watching the lies fall from his lips. When he finally paused, I reached into my bag and placed 2 items on the polished table, a printed copy of the ledger with Amarae's name highlighted and a transcript of her recorded confession. I watched the color drain from his face, his expression shifting from pleading to cold, hard fury. He tried to gaslight me, to tell me I was paranoid, that I was misinterpreting business dealings. That's when I nodded to the unassuming man in the corner, sipping a coffee, whom I had introduced as my assistant. He was, in fact, an independent auditor I had retained. The auditor's phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through Ronan's excuses. The fallout was formal and public. A compliance letter arrived from a financial regulatory body, announcing a formal inquiry into Vale Holdings' accounting practices and fund transfers. The media whispers were now headlines in the business section. Vale Holdings under scrutiny. Amarae's mask of friendship finally slipped completely. Her text was pure venom. Asterisk, you didn't have to go scorched earth on us, Zahira. This is beneath you. Asterisk, I typed back my one-word reply. Asterisk, watch. Asterisk, I began a careful, strategic campaign, leaking curated, legally safe facts to a tenacious journalist named Anya. I was controlling the narrative, painting the picture of a betrayed wife and a corrupt businessman before Ronan and Amarae could spin their version. Anya called me, her voice sharp with excitement. Asterisk, Zahira, this is huge. Do you have any hard evidence that Amarae wasn't just his mistress, but an active, profiting conspirator? Asterisk. The charity gala was the social event of the season, a sea of silk and jewels. I wore a simple, elegant black dress, a silent statement of mourning. Amarae was there, holding court as a guest of honor, her laughter a brittle sound. Ronan worked the room, but his smiles were strained, his handshakes too quick. I moved through the crowd, a ghost at their feast, giving quiet, pointed quotes to Anya and other reporters about the importance of corporate transparency and the human cost of betrayal. During the keynote address, the host, as a major donor, handed me the microphone for a thank you. I looked out at the glittering crowd, my gaze finding Ronan and Amarae. I'd just like to ask, I said, my voice clear and steady. How do we, as a community, ensure true accountability when the foundations of trust are broken and beneficial ownership is deliberately hidden? The room fell silent. Cameras swiveled. Amarae's face flushed a deep, mortified crimson. Ronan looked as if he'd been physically struck. Later, an investor I respected discreetly pulled me aside. There's a backdoor, he whispered. Asterisk, a flaw in the encryption on Ronan's offshore accounts in the Caymans. Our texts say it's accessible, but only for a short window tonight. Asterisk. The next 24 hours were a blur of coordinated digital warfare. Alara and my new ally, a brilliant and discreet forensic accountant named Liren, worked through the night. Using the provided backdoor, they traced the intricate path of the offshore funds. The method they uncovered was the deepest cut of all. Ronan hadn't needed to steal my password. Years ago, he had scanned my signature from a joint home insurance document. He had used that digital copy to forge my authorization on dozens of major transfers, making it appear as if I had co-signed my own financial ruin. The fraud was chilling in its intimacy and premeditation. As a pale dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from an unknown number. A woman's voice, laced with a weary tension, said, Asterisk, Ms. Miren. You don't know the half of what Ronan is capable of. Call me. Asterisk. The woman was Yara Veen, Ronan's former business partner from his first failed venture. Over a secure video call, her face was grim. She revealed that Ronan had once staged a fake bankruptcy on a previous company, Ether Concepts, using a web of false debts to dodge angry creditors and investors. The kicker, he hadn't acted alone. Yara gave me a single, crucial name. Asterisk. Watch the money flows from Amarae's Fleur de Sol shell. He didn't work alone then, and I doubt he's working alone now. Asterisk. I cross-referenced her information with my evidence wall. The trail was undeniable. Amarae's shell company had been involved, providing bridge financing during the Ether collapse. This was a pattern, a well-rehearsed playbook of deceit. My victory was tempered by this chilling revelation. A new envelope arrived, this one by certified mail from the courthouse. Amarae, in a breathtaking act of audacity, was suing me for defamation. The lawsuit was a massive, intimidating document, a blatant attempt to silence me through legal terror. Her lawyer demanded I retract all public statements, issue a formal apology, and pay substantial damages for harming her flourishing reputation and business prospects. The pressure was immense, a Goliath to my David. But I refused to be crushed. With Liren's meticulous help, we crafted a powerful counterclaim. We attached the entire arsenal, the veil ledger, the audio recording, the forensic proof of my forged signature, and now, Yara's sworn affidavit about the Ether Concepts fraud. The private war was now a very public, high-stakes legal battle. The day after we filed, a man in an impeccably tailored suit appeared at my door. He was a professional negotiator. He offered me a deal with a calm, condescending smile. Asterisk. My clients are prepared to offer you $2 million, Ms. Miren. A generous sum. In return, you sign this NDA and drop all claims. Take it and walk away. It's the smart move. Asterisk. The offer was an insult, but it was also a confession. It confirmed that this was never about love or passion. It was a cold, financial transaction. They wanted to buy my silence cheaply, let the scandal fade from the headlines, and then quietly rebuild their lives of luxury and influence. I didn't just refuse. I recorded the negotiator's spiel on a hidden device. Then I leaked the audio and the written offer to Anya. The resulting article was a bombshell, the price of silence, veil and soul attempt to buy victims' compliance. Social media erupted. The court of public opinion turned decisively in my favor. The very next day, Alara sent a terse text. Ronan's largest creditor, spooked by the cover-up attempt, had frozen his primary line of credit. Veil Holdings was now in a full-blown liquidity crisis. The dominoes fell with a satisfying, relentless rhythm. The board of Veil Holdings, fearing total collapse, voted to suspend Ronan indefinitely, pending the outcome of the regulatory and legal inquiries. Amarae, in a last-ditch effort to salvage her image, posted a tearful, contrite video online, claiming she was swept up and manipulated. Her performance was masterful, but it was too late. Whistleblowers from within Ronan's company, empowered by the shifting tide, leaked internal messages and emails that proved Amarae was not a passive victim but an eager, active coordinator of the financial schemes. Her brand partnerships evaporated overnight. Ronan's business relationships turned to ash. I watched their empire crumble from a distance, feeling a weary sense of vindication. The campaign had gone national, and while it was just, I couldn't ignore the collateral damage, the innocent employees at Vale, who were now fearing for their jobs. As I grappled with this, a courier arrived with a sealed, heavy envelope. There was no return address, just a label typed in a simple font. Asterisk for the truth. Read now. Asterisk. The envelope contained a nuclear-level piece of evidence. Inside was a notarized copy of a prior will Ronan had drafted years ago, which he had claimed was lost. More importantly, there was a sworn bank affidavit from a manager at a Swiss bank. It explicitly detailed how Ronan had used a forged copy of my signature, taken from that very will, to authorize a $2 million transfer 2 years prior. The affidavit directly tied this transaction to an account owned by Amarae's Fleur de Sol Holdings. This was the final, unassailable piece of the puzzle. It was the legal skeleton key that would unlock a total victory in my lawsuits. As I held the powerful documents, my intercom buzzed. My doorman's voice was tense. "Ms. Miren? A Ms. Soul is here." She's insistent. Amarae stood in my hallway, but the composed socialite was gone. In her place was a cornered animal, her eyes blazing with a desperate fury. "Sign the papers, Zahira. Drop all the suits. Now," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. When I didn't immediately respond, she played her final, most despicable card. "Or I will go to every media outlet and reveal the truth about your precious father's so-called charitable foundation. I'll paint him as a fraud and you as his accomplice. I'll bury his legacy in mud." It was a threat aimed at the most sacred part of my life. I let my shoulders slump, feigning defeat. I looked at the floor, letting a single, real tear escape. "Fine," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I'll sign, but only in a formal, recorded mediation with both our counsels present. I want this over." She agreed, a triumphant, predatory gleam in her eye. She thought she had broken me. She didn't realize she was walking directly into my trap. As she turned to leave, smug and victorious, she muttered a name under her breath, a name I had never heard before. Kavi. The name was Kavi Miren. Alara and Liren descended on this new lead. Kavi turned out to be a discreet, immensely powerful financier who operated in the shadows of high finance. He was the architect, the one who had brokered the entire global network of shell companies used by Ronan and Amarae. His goal wasn't just profit, it was control. He had been maneuvering to secure a dominant proxy seat on the board of Vale Holdings, using Ronan as his puppet and Amarae as his inside operative. The conspiracy was far bigger and more dangerous than a simple affair or embezzlement. We planned a legal ambush, moving swiftly to freeze Kavi's domestic accounts and subpoena his private correspondence, which Liren had managed to trace. The day the motions were filed, my phone rang. It was Kavi's lawyer, his voice slick and threatening. Asterisk Ms. Miren. My client is a very private man. You would be wise to reconsider this path. You don't want this fight made public. Asterisk for the first time in months, a genuine, cold smile touched my lips. Try me, I said softly, and hung up. I orchestrated the final, public reckoning with the precision of a conductor. At a closed door, emergency shareholder meeting for the crumbling Vale Holdings, I was granted the floor. I presented the entire, devastating web, the forged signatures, the offshore money trails, the audio recordings, and now the leaked emails between Ronan, Amarae, and Kavi Miren discussing proxy votes and board control. It was a tidal wave of corruption. As intended, every single detail was leaked to the press in real time. Ronan's reputation wasn't just damaged, it was atomized. Kavi, to save his own skin from regulatory scrutiny, publicly and abruptly withdrew all financial support from Vale. Amarae's last remaining sponsors and social allies severed all ties, their statements dripping with feigned shock. The world watched a multi-million-dollar company disintegrate live on business news channels. That evening, exhausted but clear-eyed, I found Ronan waiting for me in the shadows of my building's entrance. He looked like a ghost of the man I'd married. He didn't try to lie or charm. He simply fell to his knees on the cold concrete, his body racked with sobs. "Zahira, please," he begged, his voice stripped of all its former arrogance. "They'll destroy me. Kavi, he has people. Please, you have to help me. I'll do anything." He offered to turn state's evidence, to testify against Kavi and Amarae, to sign a sworn affidavit admitting to every forgery, every fraudulent transfer, every lie. I looked down at this broken man, this stranger I had once loved, and felt a profound and empty silence where my anger used to live. There was no victory in his groveling, only a sad, final closure. I gave him a clear, cold choice: cooperate fully and immediately, providing every piece of evidence he had, or I would ensure he faced the full, unforgiving force of federal prosecution. He nodded, tears and snot streaking his face, and whispered his agreement. The lion had been reduced to a mouse. The next morning, a federal subpoena was delivered to Amarae, compelling her to testify before a grand jury. In a final, breathtaking act of desperation, Amarae produced a physical, leather-bound ledger in the grand jury hearing. With theatrical gravitas, she claimed it was a secret accounts book that proved I had been in collusion with Kavi Miren for years, siphoning money from Vale long before she ever arrived on the scene. It was a brilliant, Hail Mary smear, designed to create enough doubt to save herself. The courtroom buzzed. My lawyer, anticipating such a move, immediately demanded a full forensic analysis. The expert took the stand. Under oath, he detailed how the paper was a modern, mass-produced stock. The ink was from a printer model released only last year, and the signatures were crude digital forgeries that didn't match any of my known samples. Amarae had been caught red-handed manufacturing evidence. The gavel fell with a sound of finality. The judge not only dismissed her claims but ruled to freeze all of her remaining assets worldwide and appoint a forensic auditor to dissect her entire financial life. The legal war was over. I had won, completely and utterly. The court-approved settlement was comprehensive and brutal in its justice. The majority of our marital assets, plus a significant punitive sum, were awarded to me. Amarae's shell companies were forcibly dissolved, and she was left with nothing but a mountain of legal debt. Ronan was banned from serving as an officer or director of any public company for 10 years and faced separate criminal charges for fraud and forgery. Kavi Miren was indicted on multiple counts of racketeering and securities fraud. The revenge was total, legal, financial, social, and psychological. But in the quiet that followed, I knew this couldn't be the end of my story. I refused to let their corruption define me. Using a substantial portion of the funds, I established the Miren Trust, a discreet and powerful foundation dedicated to providing legal and financial support to women in technology and business who had been victimized by corporate betrayal and gender-based exploitation. I moved to a windswept coastal town, bought a small, sun-drenched studio overlooking the sea, and began the slow, gentle work of rebuilding my peace. Amarae, her reputation in tatters, fled the country. Ronan became a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered in business circles. One afternoon, while packing, I found a faded photograph tucked inside an old book. It was of Amarae and me, arms slung around each other's shoulders, laughing uncontrollably on a beach, years before the world fell apart. I looked at our bright, trusting faces for a long moment. Then, I gently placed the photo in a small wooden box, turned a tiny key, and locked it away. I walked to my window, pushed it open, and breathed in the salty air. The horizon was endless, painted in the soft, hopeful colors of a new dawn. My story of vengeance had ended. My story of life was just beginning.